Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to this live stream here. So we have actually some rare good news as far as the House is concerned. So I want to switch over here and just show you what I'm working with. So if we look at this first update, it looks like we had, and by the way, I should note, there still hasn't been declared a winner of the House. Republicans are at 212 seats, so 6 away from their majority. Democrats are at, I think, 199, so about 19 seats away from a majority. There are a ton of seats out in California. Right off the bat, we have good news out of California's 27th, which is right here close to where I'm at in Los Angeles, and that is that George Whitesides, who is running to unseat Mike Garcia, is now within 1,000 votes of Mike Garcia. And that is good news because as votes continue to get counted in Los Angeles, these are mail ballots that continue to come in, heavily Democratic. 1,000 votes is a margin that he can absolutely overcome. So it is certainly possible that in this race that we were trailing by a pretty wide margin, we could flip in California. There is another race, and that is California's 47th. And even before all of these, the days of counting continue to come upon us, Dave Min, who is replacing Katie Porter in her seat in California's 47th congressional district, he's already taken the lead. So it's likely that we can hold on to that seat as well. Let me bring you over to the results screen as it stands right now. This is where we're at. A lot of the races that have yet to be called are California races. We have California's 9th, California's 47th, California's 49th. And we have a number of toss-up seats over here. California 13, 22, 27, 41, and 45. So there are still a number of races yet to be called. For people who are holding out hope on the House, I have to let you know that it is going to be tight. There is very little margin for error here, but the fact is that we still do have a path to victory in the House. In this entire post-election landscape, look, I've been the last person in the world that's going to feed you, in this post-election landscape, the last person in the world that's just going to feed you hopium if I don't think that it's warranted. I feel like I've been pretty clear-eyed about the issues that we're contending with right now. But I do want to let you know that as far as the House is concerned, if there is anywhere to hold out hope, there is a small path to victory in the House, which is not to say that it's going to be easy or that it's likely, but it exists. So right now it's clear that Trump has obviously taken the White House. It's clear that Republicans have obviously taken the Senate, and they've done so by a pretty wide margin. The AP has called the race for Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania, but no other network has. And they had predicted about 90,000 ballots remain in Pennsylvania, when in reality there's well over 100,000 now, and they don't know how many ballots are outstanding in total until they get them back. They know how many ballots they've sent out, but they don't know how many they're waiting on, because you don't know what you don't know. As long as they're postmarked by Election Day, they're going to accept them when they come in up to a certain point. But the fact is that we don't know exactly how many ballots are outstanding in Pennsylvania, nor do we know how they're breaking. So there is the possibility in Pennsylvania that we could see Democrats hold on to their seat. Bob Casey hold on to his seat. But I don't want to peddle anything that isn't certain. It wouldn't even make a difference in terms of the Senate majority. But there is, as you can see here, a narrow path to victory in the House where, okay, it's 200 to 211. And if you look at the races that are not yet highlighted, especially the California races, keep in mind, in these races where we see, for example, Caraveo, let's see, let's look for a really close one. Okay, Whitesides and Garcia. This is the one that I had opened this video talking about. Where it's 49.8 to 50.2, there are a lot of Democratic ballots still outstanding. Democrats overwhelmingly use mail ballots. They do the same thing in California. California unto itself is more Democratic, and so it's not outside the realm of possibility that as these ballots continue to come in, that when you have these margins that are closable, 49.8 to 50.2, that they will in fact close. I don't know that the 45.5 compared to 54.5 can be closed, but it's not outside the realm of possibility that Engel can beat Ciscomani, 48.6 to 49.1, so we can be looking on the lookout for that. Will Rollins in California's 41st, which if you followed my channel, if you followed my YouTube, you've seen that I've interviewed him numerous times. He would be an amazing addition to the House and also would unseat a guy like Ken Calvert, who literally got his start in Congress by outing his opponent. He sent pink flyers about his opponent out to their district, and he hadn't even come out to his family yet, Ken Calvert's opponent. So real piece of shit. And that's a margin that hopefully Will Rollins will be able to overcome, but it isn't as close. 48.5 to 51.5 is not as close as Whiteside's, which is only 0.4 of a point. So certainly possible for Whiteside's, holding out hope for somebody like Will Rollins. But in any case, all of that is to say that all hope is not lost in the House. Some hope is lost in the House, but not all hope in the House. So I will, of course, stay on top of any updates as we get them, as we get these finalized results in the House. But as you can see right here on the screen, 200 to 211, the magic number is 218. That will determine the House. And you know, there is a possibility, there is a narrow possibility that we can actually hold on to, flip control of the House to the Democrats. But it is going to be a narrow path, and pretty much everything has to go perfectly from here on out for the Democrats. And this isn't exactly an environment where that's happening, but it's still possible. And we have won races that were unlikely. We flipped a bunch of seats in North Carolina, for example. Even though we didn't win the presidency, we won the AG, we won the gubernatorial race, the lieutenant governor's race. So there are pockets in this country where Democrats did overperform, and hopefully some of the outstanding races that we have in the House fall into that bucket as well. So that is the update as it stands right now. There is a path to victory in the House. I'll be keeping an eye on it. In the meantime, let's use this opportunity right now to answer some questions if you have them, and kind of meet in a less rigid, backdrop from how I usually just do my videos, where I just talk at you. So if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them right now. What's the prediction on when the House race will end? It could be another week, depending on how close it is. California will continue to accept mail ballots so long as they're postmarked by Election Day. I think California accepts mail ballots up to a few weeks after Election Day. Let me find that out right now. So California can take weeks. Yeah, it is... Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how many weeks, but I know that it can take weeks. The number that's in my head right now that I want to say is about 3 weeks. So we can be here for a while in terms of when we'll actually see a final result. If Democrats get control of the House, how fast will Trump get impeached this time around? I'm not sure. I mean, like, I really can't hypothesize on what I think is going to happen, and I'm loath to just say that, like, the exact same things that happened in 2016 to 2020 or 2017 to 2021 are going to happen again. So, we'll have plenty of time to engage in the hellscape that will be our political reality in a few months. But for right now, I'll try to stay on what I can speak to with certainty, and that is what we're looking at right now. How do we get more young people interested in politics? For example, people who are just turning 18 or below 18. I really think, look, if you've seen my last few live streams, I'm pretty focused on this beat right now, and that is, it's not just about getting young people involved in politics by just doing politics. The left has a long way to go in terms of reclaiming culture, and it's not the overtly political shows and podcasts that are bringing a lot of the Gen Z kids into the political ecosystem. It's these cultural figures who lead with comedy first, who lead with culture first, who lead with sports first, and then they get like red pilled that way, because ultimately these guys are of a more right-wing political persuasion. And so I don't think it's just a matter of like, okay, we just need to like talk politics to people. I think it's that we need to invest in a left-wing ecosystem that transcends politics, that has like a basis of progressive values, but I don't think has to lead with it. I think it could be politics adjacent. And I don't know where those people are. I know that those are the kind of people we need to support, and they have to be younger than me, probably, because, you know, I'm tired, and I'm probably not as old as I think I am. And I think 5 minutes with Gen Z would make me feel 100. But that is what we need to do. I think we do need to invest in culture. We need to invest in more podcasts, more shows. The fact is that young people are listening to this stuff, not just for like 30 seconds a day on a viral TikTok. They're listening to Joe Rogan like 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day. They're sitting with this stuff. They're Jordan Peterson for hours per day. They're listening to Tucker Carlson and you know, Theo Von and these guys for hours and hours and hours. And we can't defeat that by saying like, hey, we had a cool viral clip on TikTok. It's got to be like a full-blown investment into this stuff. And again, it doesn't have to be overtly political. It doesn't mean that we have to lead with politics and only talk about politics. But we do need some type of bigger infrastructure where we can, you know, make sure that people are hearing our perspective and not just completely segmented out of hearing our perspective. I'm being asked if there would be any chance of gaming on this channel. I do not think so. I don't think anybody wants to see me game. It has been literal decades, and it would be bad for all of us. If you had only a little bit of respect for me now, you would have less if you watched me game. Let's see. Do I think the Biden administration will make some kind of statement regarding the rise in threats and hate crimes since the election? I think we'll probably get some platitudes. The fact is that you know, in terms of like threats against democracy, I think the Biden administration is probably, to be perfectly honest, I think they're more focused on like leading by example and giving goodwill to the Trump administration by saying, look how good we are. Like, we're all going to accept the results of the election. We're all going to help you with a peaceful transition of power, in hopes that we're going to like lower the temperature and mend broken fences, and that the next time if Trump loses, he'll give a peaceful transfer of power too. And it's just the Democrats. It's just Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown over and over and over again, because we can confer all the goodwill in the world onto Donald Trump and these Republicans. It counts for nothing. It counts for nothing. I mean, that's the reality of the situation, is that we can give them the sun and the stars and the moon and think that, okay, next time around, if they lose an election fair and square, they're just going to lay down their swords and you know, give us a nice pat on the head and a firm handshake and just leave. And they won't. The fact is that Donald Trump was already preparing to take the election by tweeting out bullshit like, massive cheating in Philadelphia, massive cheating in Detroit, law enforcement is descending upon these cities. They weren't, of course, but he was laying the groundwork, because they don't know how to lose. They only know how to either win or cheat to win, or pretend they've won even when they've lost. And so we'll continue to heap goodwill onto Republicans, and they'll continue not to reciprocate, and we'll just be in this doom loop forever until we get some Democrats who are actually fighters and recognize that what we need to do is not assume that Republicans should be given the benefit of the doubt and that they'll reciprocate goodwill, but we should just assume that they'll lie and cheat and steal, because that's what they do every time. And I don't know how many times they have to prove it to us before we just start to recognize that this is how they operate. If the Republicans win the House by a slim margin, are there any Republicans that would vote with the Democrats to stop really insane shit? That's a great question, and I don't know the answer yet. I do know that there is one person who voted to impeach Donald Trump on January 6th. Let me see if I could find what his name was. I can't find the Republican. I can't find the Republican who won, but I do know that there was a Republican who voted to impeach Trump on January 6th. That in the aftermath of January 6th, who won despite efforts by Republicans to oust that person. But in any case, look, what's the saying? Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line, and I think they're very good at acting in lockstep. And this party has pretty much shown that it is willing to discard every ounce of integrity and dignity if it means pandering to Donald Trump. So if the question is, are there that many House Republicans out there that are going to vote with Democrats to stop really insane shit, or even Senate Republicans, I think it's probably safe to say that the answer is no. Relying on that, you got to remember, Susan Collins voted for Brett Kavanaugh because she was under some pretense that he would defend stare decisis precedent and say that Roe should not be overturned. And the second he had the opportunity to overturn Roe, he overturned Roe. So these people are not willing to listen to reason. Every Democrat in the world was like, what are you doing? He's going to vote to overturn Roe. And she was like, I believe him when he says that he's not going to vote to overturn Roe. And lo and behold, he votes to overturn Roe. And like, what do we get from Susan Collins? We get great concern, like we always do. So if you're asking whether I think that Republicans are going to wise up and like have some stand up on their morals, no. We have no indication that they'll do that because they've never done it before. And even on issues that they claim to hold dear, like Susan Collins with women's reproductive rights. So like, am I holding out hope? No, frankly, I'm not. Do I think the left needs to invest in a cool hat with a slogan? That matters to stand a chance. Like, do we need our own MAGA hat? Is that like the answer? Like all we've been missing all of this time was like make America liberal again, and just everybody has to wear a hat, but it's blue instead of red. I desperately hope that the culmination of politics has not come down to what kind of hat people are wearing. I desperately hope that, I mean, there's nothing to suggest that our politics hasn't descended that low, but I really hope that you know, me coming on 10 years of working in political media, that it's not just been reduced to a hat. I really hope so, but then again, I wouldn't put anything past us in this political environment. What would happen to Medicare and Social Security under Trump's leadership? To be perfectly, look, I get a lot of questions on what will Trump do. And I want to caution that we're going to have a lot of time to see what Trump is going to do because we're going to be here living it, and it's going to feel exhausting and nightmarish. And so I'm loath to say that this is what Trump is going to do because I feel like it's important to focus on the things in front of us instead of kind of anticipating some of the worst things before they've even happened. Like, I know that we're going to have an opportunity to talk about what he's going to do with Medicare and Medicaid because realistically, they're going to probably try to cut it. They're even during the campaign, Republicans were coming out saying that we need to cut earned benefits. We need to get entitlements under control. That means earned benefits. That means Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. If they were saying that during the campaign on an issue that is so aggressively unpopular, it is like kryptonite for their votes with seniors. And by the way, they lost the 65 and older crowd. But if they were saying that during the campaign, then I have every reason to believe that they will take an axe to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security when they believe that they're coming into office, and to a degree they are, with a giant mandate from Americans. So do I think that these things can be on the chopping block? 100% I think they can. But I don't want you to take that as sacrosanct because we haven't gotten there yet, and we'll have plenty of time to see the horrible shit that they're going to do. But I would just caution against taking anything that I guess might happen as sacrosanct because, you know, we haven't seen it yet, and I don't want to cause alarm where there's not an absolute need to do so. Do I think we need our own social media platforms, especially an alternative to X? I'm actually I'm actually a little bit split on this issue. I don't know that Democrats need to silo themselves off. I actually think that this is a moment where Democrats need to get in the fight and find people where they are, because in a lot of instances, we've lost broad swaths of the population to these right-wing ecosystems. And take X, for example, take Twitter, for example. If all the Democrats just move over to Threads, which is a left-wing echo chamber anyway, which is fine. Like, if that's what you want, that's totally fine. Some people don't want the trolls or the acrimony or the hostility, and that's completely okay. But if everybody goes to Threads and nobody's left on Twitter, then there's nobody making the case to these people who are just entrenching themselves further and further, deeper and deeper into this right-wing rabbit hole. And so we need to fight back on Republicans' terrain. And I don't think it helps us to say, don't go on Fox News, you'll validate that platform. Don't go on Twitter, you'll validate that platform. Don't go on Rumble, you'll validate that platform. The sad reality is that those platforms are already validated. There are millions and millions and millions of people who watch Fox. There are millions of people who use Twitter and who go on Rumble. And at this point, our only hope is to try to reclaim some of them and make our argument. And by the way, I think our argument is better. If you're talking about abortion rights, I think the vast majority of Americans agree with us. If you're talking about climate change, I think the vast majority of Americans agree with us. If you're talking about common sense gun safety reforms, I think the vast majority of Americans agree with us. If you're talking about expanding access to healthcare and protecting pre-existing conditions, I think the vast majority of Americans agree with us. If you're talking about workers' rights, raising the minimum wage that hasn't been raised since 2009, I think the vast majority of Americans agree with us. So we need to go on these platforms and just make the better case, as opposed to just ceding all of this ground to purveyors of disinformation on the right, who are prolific, and there are a lot of them, and they're well funded. And so we've seen Pete Buttigieg and Gavin Newsom, for example, go on Fox News. I think that's smart of them to do. I would recommend that more people do that. I try to do my part and go on, like, Piers Morgan's show, for example, and do my thing on Piers Morgan's show. Is it going to have some massive, like, realigning of the viewership? No. Does it mean that I can pick off a few people who otherwise would have been sucked into some right-wing rabbit hole? Yeah, I think so. I think seeing Pete on Fox making his case way more deftly than those idiot hosts are going to be able to do, I think that does draw a few more people out of the rabbit hole that they would have been sucked into had he not gone on those shows. So in terms of creating separate ecosystems, I understand the basis behind it, but I really do believe that we need to find people where they are and really just work to get them back. And I do believe that we have the better message. It's just a matter of making sure that as many people can hear it as is humanly possible. By the way, for those just tuning in, I know people are just joining right now and asking about updates in the House. So right now, control of the House is 200 for the Democrats to 211 for the Republicans. There are 24 races that are still not called. One race that I want to draw your attention to is, well, two races in California. California's 27th. George Whitesides, a Democrat, is now within 1,000 votes of unseating Mike Garcia. And ballots can still be counted and collected in California for, I believe, another 2 weeks here. So 1,000 votes is a small gap to close if you're George Whitesides here in California. And I believe that he'll be able to overcome that deficit and that he will win this election and unseat the incumbent Republican Congressman Mike Garcia. Moving over to California's 47th, this is Katie Porter's seat. Dave Min, the Democrat, has now taken the lead already, 50.2 to 49.8, and that is before all of these votes have come in. So, which will likely, because we're talking about mail ballots, skew more Democratic than Republican. So a good sign if Dave Min has already taken the lead in California. That's 2 seats, and basically, you know, Democrats have to be perfect. We need 18 more seats out of the 24. So there is not much of a margin for failure here, and we need to still retain the vast majority of the seats that are up for grabs. And so we'll have these answers within the coming days. Even tomorrow, I'll come back on here and we'll do another update And I'm sure this number the gap will be closed even further. But like I said, Democrats have to be pretty close to perfect here because Republicans only need 7 more seats for a majority. Democrats need 18 for a majority. So there isn't a giant margin of error here that Democrats can fall into. But as I said, I will continue to follow whatever happens in the House for the next few days or the next few weeks, however long it takes. And there's not a wide path to victory, but there is a path to victory for Democrats in the House. So do not lose all hope. Try to maintain what semblance of hope that you have left, but there is something there still. How can the House be so close when the presidency was a landslide? It's a great question, and the fact is that a lot of the Senate candidates and the House candidates ran a better margin than the top of the ticket. There are a few reasons. One, Kamala Harris may have been just that much more unpopular. She only had 3 months to introduce herself to the American electorate. A lot of people didn't know her. A lot of people fell for Trump's populist shtick. There is the fact that politics is more local, and so, everybody likes their congressperson, but nobody likes Congress, and this is a similar example of that. And when these people are able to knock on doors in their district, there's going to be a lot of ticket splitters. There's going to be a lot of people who vote for George Whitesides, but also Donald Trump, or Dave Min and also Donald Trump. The same way that Alyssa Slotkin won in Michigan, but Trump won at the top of the ticket in Michigan. And Ruben Gallego is on a path to victory in Arizona, and Donald Trump. So it depends on the individual candidates. Voters are weird. You'll often hear when it's primary season, people go out in the Iowa caucus and say like, okay, my top 3 choices are Ted Cruz, Pete Buttigieg, and Bernie Sanders. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, what is your ideology? But people are weird, and they don't fit into neat little buckets where you can say all the progressives are Bernie people, all the moderates are Buttigieg people, all the centrists are Biden people. Then you have the evangelicals with Ted Cruz. Like, people don't make any sense, and they don't fit into neat little buckets. And so oftentimes they'll vote for their congressperson because for whatever reason they might like them, but then they'll vote for Donald Trump because for whatever reason they might like him. And people aren't so affixed to their party affiliation in the same way that I think the political junkies like myself think about political affiliation, which is like, okay, I'm a Democrat, I vote for Democrats. Okay, I'm a Republican, I vote for Republicans. Okay, I get this question a lot. Does anybody think the election seemed off? I know that there's like a talking point that there's 15 million votes that haven't been counted yet. The reality is that we are going to see millions and millions and millions of ballots that have yet to be counted that are coming in from California, that are coming in as mail ballots. That margin is going to shrink. I defer to people that I trust on this issue, like Mark Elias, and he hasn't said anything, and so I think the responsible thing to do here is to wait for the people who, by the way, are advocating for Democrats, but if I don't hear any guidance from them, then I'm not going to make it up myself. Look, nobody wants Democrats to win more than me. Nobody wants Kamala Harris to have won this election more than me, but I think that it is... let me check. Give me 1 second here. Okay, but I think in terms of some potential fraud, I have no choice but to follow the lead of people who I trust, who I would trust if there was fraud to be the ones to come out and talk about it. So that's where I stand on that issue. how can an individual influence the Democratic Party by joining local clubs? Like, how best can an individual influence the Democratic Party? It's a good question. I think that there are a few ways. First of all, there's some state parties that accept donations year round, so that they can hire permanent staff, so that every election cycle we're not standing up an entirely new campaign starting from zero. So Wisconsin Democrats, for example, they have year-round staff, and that year-round staff allows them to just get better and better and better every year. And I think that's important because, like, the worst thing for us is we spend so much money on these campaigns around the election time. Wouldn't you rather donate to a campaign that knows what it's doing versus a campaign that was just stood up 5 minutes before the election because they needed to? So there's that. There's supporting these campaigns all year round. Otherwise, there's just like doing the work online, which is making sure to share stuff and spread like good messaging and use your own messaging as a way to like reach other people. And then, yeah, like doing activism, any activism that you can do, any way that you can, like, any groups that do canvassing or activism year round is at a local level is probably the best thing that you could possibly do. Okay, let's get to some more questions here. Why wouldn't they do a recount of Trump and Harris to make sure it was fair, especially with all those bomb threats? I think it's not even, the margin isn't even close enough to warrant it. I think that depending on how close the margin is, if it's like within half a point, it triggers automatic recounts in certain places. It wasn't even close enough for it to warrant it. So I think that in certain places they can request it, but I think it wasn't even close, that it wouldn't even make enough sense for them to do it, and the results were clear enough. Why won't Biden use the new immunity ruling in his favor? Do you have an opinion on this? Republicans would use it against us 100%. That's true. You want the real answer why Biden won't use the new immunity ruling in his favor? It's because we all know who Joe Biden is, and I think he's more focused on like, again, mending fences and reconciling fissures within the country, and what I think is probably a misguided effort and a naive effort to confer some goodwill onto the other side in hopes that it'll be reciprocated. Will it be reciprocated? No. But I think that it's part of his mentality that we're going to go back to a time of unity and cooperation and compromise, and by using the immunity ruling, he'll undermine all of that. And so we have to continue to give goodwill to Republicans who will then turn around and spit in our faces, but that's neither here nor there. Also, because ultimately, if he tries to do something, even if it's under the umbrella of an official act, and that's, you have presidential immunity so long as it's an official act. Think for a second, if Biden tried to do something, and I don't even know what he would try to do, but if Biden tried to do something, the Republicans would challenge it, they would go to court, they would argue that what he's doing is not an official act. Think about who the final arbiter of that question would be. It would be the Supreme Court. This is a Supreme Court that is so tilted in Trump's favor that he gave Trump this power in the first place. And so I don't think that they need to say, oh, well, we already said we're boxed into a corner because we said that everything, a president can do anything. They would just say, nope, this isn't an official act. You can't do this. Because who are they going to appeal? Who are you going to appeal to? Who's Biden going to appeal to? The higher Supreme Court? That's it. They have the final say in the matter. And these aren't people for whom long, deeply held principles are a driving force. Again, they all said that they agree with stare decisis. They all agree with settled precedent. And they all voted to overturn Roe. These aren't people who actually have long-standing principles or deeply held convictions. They're just political hacks. They're no different from Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz, except they're wearing robes. And so they'll tell Donald Trump that he has carte blanche to commit criminal acts with impunity, and then they'd be perfectly willing to tell Joe Biden that he can't commit any acts with impunity. Like, to leave all of our eggs in the basket of just trusting this Supreme Court, I think is not paying attention to what the Supreme Court is telling us, which is that they are a partisan body that is there to look out for Republicans. And it's as simple as that. So between Joe Biden's likely unwillingness to be as aggressive as I would love for him to be, and the Supreme Court's unwillingness to be consistent, it's not even worth it for him to try to do anything with this Supreme Court ruling. Okay, I'm getting an interesting question, and I don't even know if I should answer it, but I feel like I should. I feel like it's worth being honest here. So the reason that I haven't worn suits, and I've worn suits in every YouTube video for, let's see. Hang on one sec. Just blocking a troll really quick. There we go. So the reason that I haven't worn suits is I feel like I started my career in political media. I was like a 20-something, and it was hard to be taken seriously online if you're just like some punk kid shooting videos in your bedroom. And so I dressed up to like try to get some validation from people who otherwise wouldn't have taken seriously somebody in like a t-shirt. And I feel like largely that was a successful venture, and I'm an MSNBC contributor now, and I was able to interview the President of the United States and you know, kind of like fake it till you make it, right? Like get to a point where I was at a position where I like worked my way into the seriousness that I hoped I would be taken when I started wearing a suit. But now I feel like when I look at the audience that we're having the most trouble with, it's probably not the people that will only trust you if you're wearing a suit. Now I feel like it's the opposite, where if Democrats have a problem with younger people and they see a dude in a suit, is that going to look more relatable than somebody wearing a t-shirt? And I think it's probably not. And so I don't know, like in terms of me thinking how I can be the most helpful to the moment that we're in right now and the movement that we're in right now, maybe it's worth it to try and look to dress in a way that's like that's more relatable to the people that we actually need to reach. So you know, that's where I'm at. I don't know if it's the right move. I really don't. But anyway, that's just some insight into where I'm at. So I'll figure out what I'm gonna do. You know, obviously, if I have interviews with like politicians, I'll wear a suit. But I'm just trying to, you know, we're in a weird spot right now. Like, I think everyone's kind of trying to figure out what everything's going to look like moving forward, and I'm trying to figure out how I can be most helpful moving forward. And so I know it's like a weird thing, just like what I'm wearing, but yeah. Oh, let's see. So I blocked somebody, but I don't know how to block them. I don't know how to block, maybe restrict. Maybe I did it. Okay, sorry, we were having an issue in the chat. So I restricted somebody, but I don't, oh, okay, I'm being told how to ban them. Here we go, type. Okay. I think I did it. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, let's go back to some questions here. Besides the Democrats not being able to reach enough of an audience, do you think there's anything else they did wrong during the presidential campaign race? Okay, That's a great question. Here's my honest opinion on that. I want to be clear, like, I can Monday morning quarterback. I'm not holding it against anybody because nobody knows that whatever our strategy was wrong until we've lost. So I don't want to come and say like, oh, I thought all along that Joe Biden should have declared right away that he was not running for office again, because I didn't know that. And the fact is that we all watched Joe Biden beat Donald Trump, and then Democrats cruise to victory in the 2022 midterms, and then win all these special elections in 2023. And so I like, with all of that said, now in retrospect, if I could go back in time and change things, I think the obvious answer is that after Joe Biden wins, then we probably do have a proper primary and figure out who the predecessor is going to be and give them enough time to both win the primary, mend some wounds that would inevitably come from a bruising primary, and then focus their attention on Donald Trump and raise their profile and make sure the American people knew who that person was. We didn't have that this time. I thought Kamala Harris ran as good a campaign as she could have possibly run, given what she was contending with, which is 3 months to stand up a presidential campaign and introduce herself to 350 million people and take on somebody who has basically been in front of everybody's faces for almost 10 years in Donald Trump. That's not an easy barrier to overcome. It's not easily surmountable. And I think she did as well as she could. I don't think we should have picked anybody else, because who else could it have been? Like, are you going to tell the vice president who's literally next in line that all of a sudden, like, we're going to stand up a primary in July and somehow that's going to be resolved by August, and then you have like 1 month, 2 months to stand up an entire presidential campaign? There's not enough time, and nobody expected Joe Biden to get descend as fast and obviously as he did after that first debate. Nobody expected it. Remember, it was Biden's campaign that insisted on a June debate. It was Biden's campaign. If they knew that he was in that shape, they wouldn't have put him on that stage. It was his own campaign that put him out there. So nobody anticipated this. I didn't anticipate this. Every time that we'd seen him in public, sure, he's an old guy and he shuffles, but like, he did fine at the State of the Union. Let's see, I have to charge this. He did fine at the State of the Union. When he does these speeches, he always did a good enough job. Like it was all okay. It was like a right-wing talking point that like Biden was old, but they lie about everything, and so why would we take it seriously? But the way that it happened, there just wasn't enough time. And so the honest truth is, like, if we could have changed things in retrospect, sure, I would have said that Joe Biden was going to be a transitional candidate right after he won in 2020, then make him a lame duck, figure out who the predecessor is going to be, and hand it off to somebody younger in the next generation who can be the new standard bearer. But like, we didn't do that. And so I think that we're in the position that we're in right now. And also, it's worth noting, even if we had the best candidate on the face of the earth, that might not have mattered, because this was a period of global inflation. Every single country in the world had either ousted its incumbent leader or they lost vote share. And so the US wasn't immune to that. It happened in France, it happened in the UK, it happened in South Africa, it happened almost everywhere in the world that I can think of. The US, we actually lost by the smallest margin of any other country or governing party in the world, but we weren't immune to the forces of high inflation and unhappiness as the result of that high inflation, or economic instability as a result of that high inflation. So even if we had, Barack Obama 2.0, some generational candidate who was able to transcend political divides, even that I'm not sure would have been enough to win this election, because people were hurting and they want to take it out on the people in power, and the people in power right now are the Democrats. Sorry, I said predecessor, I meant successor. Is there a probability that Kamala runs again despite the loss? I don't think so. I think that she's going to go the way of other Democrats who have run, other Democratic candidates who've run and lost, and that is that she's going to not run again. I mean, like, Hillary's not going to run again. John Kerry didn't run again. I would venture to say it's damn near impossible that we will see Kamala Harris run again. I think that's it for her time trying to be a candidate. So I think that's probably as close to a certainty as possible. Pineapple on pizza, I'm okay with it. Yes. Hey Brian, please read. I'm a hardcore Trump supporter, but I really appreciate what you do. Although we disagree, I believe you genuinely care about this country and are a good guy. I appreciate that. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah. Will I come to Virginia to campaign next year? The House of Delegates needs to stay blue. That is a great question, and I will do whatever I can in Virginia. And remember, okay, so I'm glad that this question was asked. So I know that people are despairing and upset right now. I am. I'm basically like, this is like my equivalent of showing up in sweatpants every day because I can't even bring myself to get dressed. But the first elections in an off-year cycle are going to happen next year, and I can, if I can promise you anything, it's that Americans who don't know who Trump is, don't remember the chaos that enveloped us during his first administration. We're too young to have experienced that chaos because maybe they're 18, 19, or 20 now, and we're like 10 years old when he was president the first time. They will be introduced to it. And in the same way that he was wickedly unpopular his first term because the chaos is exhausting, he will be unpopular now. And the first opportunity that Democrats will have to serve as a referendum on Trump's presidency will be in Virginia, and we will show up and we will win. And then the second opportunity we will have will be the same opportunity in midterms that we had in 2018. And I have to remind you that Democrats won the House in 2018 by the biggest margin in modern American history. And so do not doubt the fact that we will have the opportunity to, again, vote in a way that acts as a referendum on Trump's presidency. And it'll happen in Virginia in these off-year elections, and then it'll happen in midterms in 2026. So when I say stick with us and do not check out, take time, take days or weeks, take the holidays, and then come back because there is a fight and we have the opportunity to voice our dissatisfaction. And I'm absolutely certain that we'll be able to do it, not just in these off-year cycle elections in 2025, but also in midterms in 2026 and beyond. So stick with us here. What makes us believe we will have elections in 2 years? It's a fair question. There's always the possibility with somebody like Donald Trump that they'll do everything they can to prevent it from happening. But I think right now, until we have a reason to operate under the assumption that something's happening, that we continue to protect to move forward, assuming that we have the things that we have. I'll be the first one to raise the alarms if it looks like anybody's trying to cancel elections or doing anything like that. And hopefully if something that drastic were to happen, then even these fucking spineless Republicans would step up and say, okay, this is actually a bridge too far. That's my hope. Of course, it's perfectly likely that I'll be proven wrong because Republicans haven't been shown to have much of a spine when it comes to anything. But again, until we have a reason to panic about something, we shouldn't panic about it. We can worry about it, but we'll get to the point where bad things will happen and we can give it its due attention. But I think right now we just have to continue operating under the assumption that until there's a threat directly to our midterm elections, then we just keep going and we look forward to winning these midterm elections. Let's see. Should people start boycotting right-wing businesses, especially big ones like Amazon? It's so difficult for me to say because, like, some of these businesses like Amazon are just, is me not ordering like toilet paper from Amazon one day going to change the fact that every person in the entire country uses Amazon on a daily basis? So it's difficult. Like, what we need is to continue having someone like Lina Khan at the FTC who will continue enforcing antitrust regulations and to ensure that businesses don't get too big like Amazon has. But the honest truth is, like, I don't know that we can do anything about Amazon right now. Other than, actually, the FTC is suing Amazon because of their unfair practices. So we do need, like we should be supporting people like Lina Khan at the FTC. But of course, Trump will fire her when he gets into office. But all of that is to say that there are people doing the work in office, and it doesn't happen often. But those are the kind of people that we should support. Can Trump still be disqualified from holding office? I mean, metaphysically, it's possible. Would I put any money on it? No. I wouldn't put a single dollar on it. So, I'm just trying to be, I want to be realistic. And there are things that I think are can happen, and there's things that I think are possible but are not likely going to happen, and that's one of them. So I would save our energy to fight, to hold out hope when it's realistic for us to hold out hope. Did the vote against gerrymandering in Ohio win? That is a great question. Independent Redistricting Commission. No, it lost. Damn. I actually was so focused on the presidential race that I didn't even see that. Not signed in there. Voters reject issue 1, leaving politicians in control over the map-making process. Damn, what a bummer. What a bummer. Not even by that much either. 53.8 to 46.2. Damn, that's terrible. And you can see all of the Democratic population centers voted yes. And all of these people, overwhelmingly red area, wanted gerrymandering to stay in place. That's so miserable. It's a bummer that even in places like Cincinnati, they could only manage 55% of the vote. Montgomery County, which is Dayton, Ohio, 51.8% of the vote. What a dismal showing. This was the most important issue happening in Ohio aside from the Senate race, but just a terrible environment for Democrats to try to compete in, and it shows. Damn, that's a bummer. But it's a good call because I completely forgot that existed. Are there things Biden can do right now to protect our country while he's still president? He still has the ability to send money to Ukraine, which I believe he's preparing $6 billion to send to Ukraine. There are still a few climate things that he could do. So, for example, he could. There is the question of some LNG. Is it LNG? Liquefied natural gas. There's some liquefied natural gas question in front of him, and so I know that there is a petition going around to request that he block that, to block those LNG. So let me find that petition. I can put it in the chat, and if people want to sign it. It urges him to reject 5 liquefied natural gas facilities before he leaves office. So that is something that we could do, and I'll put it in the chat right now. So if you want to sign that petition, that's a small step that we could take. But otherwise, yeah, I think any climate protections he could do while he's in office, look, he can shore up the government insofar as he can, but remember, ways that Joe Biden can shore up the government and shore up democracy are only as strong as the willingness of his successors to actually abide by those things. So if they put statutes and none of the Trump people decide to take it serious, like if they put regulations in and none of the Trump people decide to abide by it, then that's that. And again, all of this stuff is only as certain as other people's willingness to respect it. And so, at some point, I think it becomes clear what they're going to do with any, mealy-mouthed regulations put forward in the last minute by Biden to preserve something. How much impact do I think Gaza had on the election? It had some impact, but the reality is that Democrats backslid like in 99% of counties. And so this is a bigger problem than, even if there was no Israel-Gaza, the result would have been the same. Democrats lost ground in almost every county, in every state across the country. And so, except for like Washington, I think, was the only one, or Colorado. I don't think that issue is top of mind for Democratic voters in Utah. I don't think it was top of mind for Democratic voters in Alabama or Mississippi. I think this was just so much deeper than that. And it certainly didn't help, obviously didn't help. I think the Arab population in like Dearborn, Michigan swung something like 80 points to the right. Not going to help you win elections. And Alyssa Slotkin did win the Senate there. So I don't know, could Kamala Harris have won? Maybe. But the fact is, I think it was a much deeper issue than what we're seeing. Do I see a problem with Democrats in swing states moving to traditionally blue states like New York or California? It seems like it could turn into a trend, and it worries me. I think the opposite is happening. I think people are actually leaving blue states like New York and California and going to swing states like Arizona and Nevada and Texas, insofar as Texas could be considered a purple state, which it's not, but it could be. It's getting there, or at least it was before this election cycle. But I think it's the opposite of that trend. And by the way, just a note, if anybody wants to support my work, if you haven't yet followed or subscribed, that is the best way to support my work. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, and I don't put my content behind a paywall. So just following and subscribing is the best way. But so thank you for anybody who's here who hasn't yet subscribed or followed. That is again a great way to support my work, and I appreciate it. Okay. How often do I plan to stream? I think probably every day. I mean, you all let me know if you enjoy these streams and you think they're more helpful than just my regular offering, which is YouTube videos. If you think it's if you think it's helpful for me to sit here and answer questions, then I'll probably do it pretty often. But but that's really up to everybody who's watching. If you think this is worth it to continue doing this. Maybe I should pin that petition, by the way. Oh yeah. Do I think that, okay, here's a good question. Do I think Biden should fill the 40 plus judge positions before he leaves office plus Sotomayor? Absolutely. 100%. Look, I don't know why Democrats are being so polite about the Sotomayor situation. Sotomayor is 70 years old. I don't think she's in the best health in the world. And we have just sat back and watched the Supreme Court. We've watched one Democratic justice die on the U.S. Supreme Court in Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's diabetic. That's right. Thank you. We watched one justice die on the U.S. Supreme Court. The notion that we should do it again because why? Because we need to be like polite. I mean, these people are not deities. They're not gods. Like this is part of a movement to protect the rule of law and democracy and women's reproductive rights and just liberal ideology. And so if that person becomes a threat to that by virtue of, sure, like factors out of their control, we get it, it happens. It's not a knock on them, it's just reality. But if they become a threat to that by virtue of their age or their health, then like, we need to fix that, because if they believe in the things that they claim to believe in and they themselves become an impediment, then we have to replace them for somebody who's more certain. We can't just, we shouldn't have a monopoly on old people on the Supreme Court, especially entering in a really precarious situation right now where Donald Trump is coming into office and we don't know the next time we'll have a Democrat in office to appoint a nomination. And like, what if we're in a 12-year drought? What if we're in a 16-year drought? God forbid. But like, does that mean Sonia Sotomayor at 70 now, who might be 86 and diabetic, is going to survive? I don't know. So maybe we learn from the mistakes of the past and she steps down or she's replaced and we get somebody who's young in there. I think that's the most important thing. I think right now we have to do that. Again, like our politicians should not, like, we shouldn't treat them like deities. They're all here as vehicles for the movement that the agenda that we're trying to pass. That's all they are. Like we don't owe people anything. They were elected. They serve a purpose, and then when they can't, or when they endanger that purpose, then they have to step aside, or we have to vote them out. Like, it's not about the people. It's not about the personalities. It's about the agenda. It's about protecting liberal democracy. My thoughts on Susie Wiles being the chief of staff pick, and will she be able to keep Trump somewhat in check or be the shadow president when he's golfing 90% of the time? The reality is that I think that far from just Susie Wiles being the shadow president, I think that Donald Trump will be successful in putting people in a lot of these positions who are going to be able to just enact the agenda that they've decided that they want to enact. It'll be the Project 2025 agenda, and I think he's, he will fix the mistakes of his first term, surround himself with loyalists and extremists and sycophants and theocrats, and they won't it'll be more of a well-oiled machine than it was before. And I don't think Trump cares about policy. I think he's going to get in there. He's going to pardon himself immediately so that he has that in his back pocket. He's going to make sure that he withdraws his federal prosecutions against him. So he'll do that. He'll make sure there's no DC prosecution. He'll make sure that there's no Florida classified documents prosecution. And once he does that, then he'll go golf and he'll have these sycophants do whatever they do because he doesn't care about policy. You think Donald Trump cares about education? You think he cares about charter schools? You think he cares about, well, he probably cares about tax policy because he doesn't want to pay them. But like, do you think he cares about women's reproductive rights one way or the other? Whatever people want around him, he'll just do it. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't have long-standing principles. He doesn't have any deeply held convictions. Whatever way the wind blows is what he wants. But the people who surround him, they do. And if they want school vouchers, if they want, the proliferation of weapons of war, like whatever it is the people around him want, sure, he'll be like, have at it. I'll sign my name at the end, and we'll have a signing ceremony. I'll get the attention. But like in the meantime, I'll go golfing. And that's almost almost scarier than if Donald Trump was bumbling around himself trying to do this stuff. Would I consider hosting progressive panels with other online left-wing creators like Pacman, Kalinsky, Luke Beasley? We need to build a coalition. Yes, 100%. I will. I would and I will. And Tim, I'll get Tim Miller on too. Actually, I think I asked Tim Miller if he wanted to join the stream, and I also asked, I asked a few people. So there will be, on these streams, we will have guests moving forward. Let's do one more question here because I think I need to eat some food. How's it going to work with him being president and so many countries not allowing convicted felons into their country? As much as I would love to see countries not allow Donald Trump into their country because he's a convicted felon, I think that they'll probably make an exception. Why isn't there an investigation on Musk about the daily $1 million for Trump votes? Because it's, is it illegal? It did go to court, and the case was dismissed. It went to court. It was brought to court by the Philadelphia DA, and the Philadelphia DA lost at the trial court. So they allowed Elon Musk to keep going with the payments. Will I have Destiny or Pacman as a guest? I don't know that Destiny can come on Twitch, but happy to have him on YouTube. And Pacman, yes, of course. Okay, let's do one more question here. Any idea what's going to happen to the Bragg case moving forward since Trump can't pardon himself for state crimes? So because there's a DOJ policy, according to the Office of Legal Counsel, the OLC, there's guidance saying that a sitting president can't be indicted or prosecuted, so all of those pending prosecutions will be paused. I don't know, and you're right, Donald Trump can't pardon himself for a state crime, or a president can't be or anybody can't be pardoned for a state crime, so there's no way he can insulate himself from that. I don't know what he could do corruptly to use the levers of government to make that prosecution go away. I think he'll try. We haven't seen it yet. As of right now, I can say that that prosecution will be paused, as will the Georgia prosecution against him. Remember, the Georgia prosecution, the RICO prosecution against Trump in Fulton County, Georgia, had 19 co-defendants in total. I think 4 of them flipped, and then 1 of them was Trump, so that puts us at 14. The prosecution against them, those co-defendants, can still move forward, but as far as Trump is concerned, he can't be indicted on the state level or federally while he's president. So those indictments at the state level, whether it's in Georgia and New York, in terms of the sentencing that we're waiting for, everything is going to be paused while he's president, and maybe we'll see it in 2028. God knows where we'll be in 2028 or what the landscape will look like. So, you know, that's where we're at in terms of all of that stuff. So, with that said, again, one quick note, if you'd like to support this stream, please consider subscribing or following my page. That is a great way to support my work. Again, I don't do paid ads or sponsorships or anything like that, but just following along is the best way to support me. And I appreciate you all sitting in and listening to these chats here, and I'll continue them on a daily basis as long as people want to keep watching. So thank you again for tuning in, and I'll catch everybody on the next one. All right, bye guys. Thank you.